Welcome to The Grant, the EU funding podcast. My name is Niels Tudor Winter and I'm the creator, editor and host of The Grant. My timeline series is going through the proposal process step by step, giving tips, tricks and advice on the Horizon Europe proposal preparation process. I have reached to the actual proposal writing, and now it is time to dig into the impact section. I decided to dedicate 4 episodes to this section because I have some great resources at my hand in my advisory board that covers different aspects. There will be 2 episodes covering 2.1 projects pathways towards impact and 2 episodes covering 2.2 measures to maximize impact. The impact section 2.1 is where you describe the results and the effects that your project will have on the technology, business and society level. I have written some impact sections myself, but to make sure I get critical mass in these crucial episodes, I have invited team lead of research support at the IT University in Copenhagen, Melanie Büscher, and Danish NCP and chief consultant in the Danish Agency for Higher Education and Science, Barbaro Spano, on board sharing their career-long experience evaluating, reviewing and advising proposals under preparation. In this second episode, we reflect and discuss how to best structure the input for the section when putting pen to paper, and how to get the best out of partners that often find it hard to deal with this specific yet crucial chapter. Please enjoy. The Grant.
Dream. At some point, it's going to.
It's gonna bridge us. It's bridging us because I'm trying to keep an eye on the time here. So let's just bridge that into how to actually attack this as a proposal writer. And we're just going to. So I'm going to share with people what I have done. And you're going to share, so that's what we're going to base on, because you've been advising people and you've seen a lot of proposals on also Horizon Europe, even though it's a new program. So now we're going to try to give a little bit of reality check how it is when you actually start to do this. So if we start with that, Melanie, when you a proposal process starts with someone having an idea of something that they would like to lift into a funding program, and it can be a private company, it can be a university, it can be an NGO, whatever. There is something. There's a little seed there growing that they would like to see flourish. So there's already a vision behind, so to say. So that's already there. But and you know that because you do it every day. Barbaro, you'll be doing at the Technical University of Denmark, and Melanie, you're doing it every day. You work with researchers that profoundly do not focus on the impact part. They focus on their research, focus on their narrow area that they work with. They have a good idea, but often the motivation is that they would like to work with European partners, but they want to get funding, external funding, so they can continue and make their research area, that they continue with that and make that stronger. So there's always this, because the university world is scarce of resources, especially for the actual research. So when you start that process, and when you work together with them as a private consultant, as I have been, it's very difficult to in the beginning to work and on the impact part. So you often need to build things up. So what do we have here with this little seed? And then you put a Lego house, so to say, around, unless they already have what they want, a partner. So, but normally if they have an idea they want to develop, then you work with it like a Lego house. And if you at a too early stage start to talk about things that they're not interested in, you lose them a little bit. They start to be uncomfortable about the process because it's something that is outside of their comfort zone. So as a private consultant, it's quite relatable to what you're doing, because my focus was to work mostly with researchers, universities and private research organizations, finding the researchers that were sitting with a specific research area that was fitting specific call, and then I would work very closely together with the individual researcher or the research team on shaping that into that the research they were doing, calibrating it to the core text, and then starting to say, what context do you have yourself? Do you normally work together with some? They would always have a network, private companies and so on, end users, but it's a patchwork in the beginning, so it's very difficult it's tricky to start in that. I don't know if it makes sense. So that's the challenge you have when you are building things up from the beginning. It's the more you work together. If you have a group of partners that have been working together on, say, 2 projects over 10 years, for instance, continuously working on the same thing, it's much easier because they know their way. Everybody knows what it's about. But when you start, it's tricky. Do you is it resonating with what you see in your day-to-day when you work with this, the concrete proposals that you give a hand?
Well, I can maybe start from my experience at DTU. I think that writing impact, that sometimes there was an expectation that the researcher themselves should not write impact, that I could just write it. And that I could write it in maybe a moment, that it not necessarily after understanding what it is described under the excellence part of the proposal. And that can be difficult because when writing impact, you have to refer also to the results. And as we said before, impact is much more than results. But there is a concept behind the proposal. There are objectives that the consortium would like to achieve. There are expected results at different moments during the project timeline. And then there is an impact section where you have to go through what you have described or what you are describing in the excellence part, and then try to influence what it is written in the excellence part, and then at the same time write the impact part. So for me, what it was a challenge is that you had to go back and forward to what described in the topic, what expected at the call level, what it is expected at the destination level, what the researcher would like to achieve with a specific proposal, and then try to find a way so that you can address the impact session by being true in what it is in the excellence part, and then try to write the 2 parts actually together so that it makes sense throughout the entire proposal. But that also means that has an influence on how consortia write a proposal and how they divide the work among themselves. And that is not necessarily the easiest part, especially for the paragraph 2.1 within impact, that there is a group writing that without knowing what the other are writing within the excellence part. So that was like my biggest challenge when supporting a consortia writing.
It's a horrible work. It's a horrible work.
Yeah, it's like you need to. No, it's not horrible,
I think so.
but you need to have different things, look at different things at the same time. So, I mean, looking at like the proposal is shaped not like first excellence and then impact and then implementation, but there are things that happen together. Yeah.
Melanie?
I think it's an incredible fun work to start with. I really don't find it horrible at all. I love it. Oh my God, I love it so much. And let me give you a very concrete example. Here at the IT University, we have a group of researchers that work on robotics. And one of the things that they have been interested in for a long time is to find out how to build robots that can adjust to surfaces that are, how do you say that, to pronounce it properly, heterogeneous. So the opposite of homogeneous, where the surfaces are different all the time.
Yep.
Because robots today, they cannot do that. I mean, they're really good at taking one thing and and do something with it, and then the next thing, and then the next thing. But these things, they always have to look the same. And we have a research group at the IT university. They want to find out how to build robots that can adapt to things, items that are different and that have soft surfaces. So that's their research interest. They really want to do that, and they have some cooperation partners in different parts of Europe. So we have a very clear research idea and motivation, and we also have parts of a consortium. Now the next question is, where do I get the money from? Because they have to attract external funding in order to be able to employ the postdocs, the PhDs. They have to find, some parts of industry where they can play, so to speak. So what do they do? Since it's a European consortium, we go to the EU Horizon Europe work program. And a couple of years ago, there was this call about robotics, and it had two clearly defined expected outcomes. One of them was a new generation of AI-powered robotics, and the other one was smarter robots with improved capabilities. So yes, cool. We're on track. This is something that could work for us. That's exactly what our research want to do. Now the next question for me and for them was, okay, let's look at the wider goals. What is it? Why do we have this call? What is it the European Union wants to achieve? And there we found things like, a greener economy, industrial leadership. It gets really, really fluffy. But that also means that this is the kind of framework that we have to put a proposal in, or that we have to be able to relate to. I think that's the words that I really want to use here, that the researcher has to be able to relate to the overall goals. If this was something, if the goals had been different, and maybe it could have been something completely different, and then we should have stopped it right there. Instead, what we did was to think, okay, how can we translate this research idea into something that fits with these overall goals? And that actually led us to build a consortium together with a company that handles parts of chicken. Mm-hmm. Like it's a company that whose job it is to take the different parts of the chicken and put it into the boxes so that they look nicely when they come to the supermarket. Mm. And when you look at chicken drumsticks, I mean, they have definitely soft surfaces, and they look different every single time. So all of a sudden, it's really interesting to work with a company within the food sector, because there's so much waste going on. And also there are other there's so much waste going on, and since it's manual handling so far, there are a lot of problems with or potentially with hygiene. Mm-hmm. So all of a sudden, or immediately, we had our narrative, because we were by including them in our consortium. We have the company whose grounds our researchers can play on, so to speak. Mm-hmm. And also we have a narrative that fits with the overall goals. So then the next challenge was to build the narrative, as I said before, with regards to the impact section. But it's really like these overall goals for me in my job, they are a part of the decision to write or not write a proposal. So I don't see them as, big barriers or so on. They're like, they make my job so much easier, because for me it's much easier to say to a group of researchers with this amazing idea and a half consortium, these overall goals, they make it so, and the impact sections make it so much easier for me to say, yes, go for it, or no, don't, because you cannot put a consortium together that plays with a convincing narrative. Do you see where I'm trying to get?
Yeah.
Because it's, if the funder tells me, okay, I'm going to give you 5 million euros if I can see that your projects help society to go this way. And the research idea and the researchers who would love to get the 5 million euros find out that, actually, we're not going to go. We cannot build, like very concretely in this situation, we cannot build a green narrative around this project idea. Then I can tell everybody, well, let's save our time and let's not write this proposal.
Obviously, that's what you talk a lot about in the consortiums I've been building up. First, you look at what do they want? Can we reach this? Is this technology solution something that can actually achieve this and this and this? So I agree, but I think thanks for, because it's always good to be very practical with concrete examples from proposals. Thank you, Melanie. What I refer to as being awful is a proposal process where you have a group, like Barbara said, that writes on excellence. Often it's the universities or research partners, together with the core company partners, for instance, that are involved on the technology side. And then the impact side, it's more left a little bit to everybody often. Yeah. So it's when you're private consultants, it is on your shoulders to do, to gather the input. And you have partners that are work package leaders in relation to it. So they cannot escape. So they have to deal with it, but they really don't like it very much. So if you are in the consultant, if you're writing as a consultant, then you are dealing with that. Yeah, so you write it. But when you come to the part of the process where you are ready to start attacking the impact part, probably you have 3 weeks, a month left. Ideally, it should be earlier, but that's often what happens. And you have the researchers, they have their head all the way up in the research in the excellence part. Yeah. It's also a matter of communication and chemistry in the consortium, but if they are not really on top of what actually is baseline, what is actually the figures that corresponds to excellence that we need to know about to write something around significance, the market, stuff like this, then you end up, people stop replying to the emails, because that's what happens if they're busy. Anyways, they have a daytime job, and then they have a promotion. Yeah, so they have something they do, especially the companies, but also the researchers. They are doing. They have students. They have PhDs. They are doing education. They go to the So they have lots of other things on their plate, and when they get a difficult email where they really struggle to, this is a difficult nut to crack, then it starts to be difficult to drag the information out of the sorely needed information you need to write exactly how we just described it beautifully in the first part of this episode. What you need to do, what kind of things you should do. You should have the figures, you should have the baselines, you should have the things that carve this into why is your proposal making a difference. Yeah, what is it that you specifically do that will change things fundamentally or state of the art? Why are you pushing the limits here and making things so beautiful here in the world with this? And they can't really drag those figures out. So you sit there, and that's why it becomes poetry sometimes, because the proposal writer doesn't have the raw material to write a good impact section. I've been people screaming for information of my colleagues when we've been working with these things. How do you want us to write a proposal that you want if you don't give us the information we need? It's what I just said. It's because they're busy. It's because it's uncomfortable. They actually don't really know, or they don't have the time to sit down and take that meeting with the other partners to carve it out and to find out. So yeah, Barbara, you raised your finger.
Yes, thank you, Niels. Well, I still think that it was not a horrible process, despite having to write maybe some section by myself. I still think it was fun, but it depends on the consortium. And I think it's easier sometimes when you work within an institution, then you start knowing the environment and the researchers and what you can expect. No, but yeah, I just wanted to add a very little thing, and it is something that brings us back to what I was saying at the starting, that when you start writing this section 2.11, you really need to focus on the key performance indicator. So you need to be as specific as possible, and you need to refer to effect of your project and not to the research and innovation ecosystem in general. And here it is actually a good place to refer to key performance indicator. So when you start describing results, outcomes, think about key performance indicator that can make easier for you, the evaluators, the consortia, also to see what are we going to achieve and how are we going to measure what we are going to achieve. So here it is KPIs.
Yeah, and maybe we just talk a little bit about format or layout. So how do you choose your presentation, so to say? So you have here, it's obvious that many of these elements that we deal with, it's good to make tables, simple tables, but overview tables of the baseline, for instance. Or I put down here, let me see here, for instance, target groups, obviously, the scientific outcomes, the economic outcomes, because you need to, and we haven't touched it, but the fact is that they cut the pages in half of what you have to hand in. So everybody is having a problem with fitting things into the short amount of page. So 4 pages is the recommended for the impact part, yeah, including what? Now, how much is it?
No, it's 4 pages for the 2.1 as the example, yeah.
But still, it's tricky to fit it in. So I don't know. I can say for my part, to strike a good balance between poetry, so the text that you write around, and then the tables, because you need to. There are some things where you cannot. For instance, the market description. If you need to have that, if it's a technology thing, you have to have it, but you're not put it into a table. It doesn't make any sense. But obviously, structure things, page size-wise, is good to have it in a table if it's something that makes sense. Like, for instance, the target group. Also, the barriers. Often you see that I have been looking at a winning proposal I was involved in last year, and there we had, for instance, the barriers in the table, which is quite normal. But I don't know, have you got some good tips, or what have you seen in your ways of working with these things, just for people to get an idea?
I think sorry.
Please, Melanie, no, just on.
Okay, I think I've basically seen everything, and sometimes and I've seen tables. I've seen the recommendation to repeat what it says in the EU documents, and then have a new column showing how things are connected. That works for some proposals. Sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. Graphics are always very convincing, and not only for people like me who are very visual, but we all are very visual. And if you can translate information and a lot of text into a simple graphic, that's always extremely convincing, because it's so much easier to remember that information. I would like to pick up on 2 things that have been said before. The one thing is how tedious work writing this, and how tedious it can be to get information from consortium partners for this particular section. And I actually don't think it's about people being too busy or not giving the information. I think really it's about not having the information and not being used to thinking in these ways. And also, as human beings, we're extremely good at dedicating all our time to activities we see a meaning in. And we're always, it's always a little bit of struggle to get us to do something we don't really see as a meaningful activity. And when you're driven, like the research I've just referred to, when you're driven by finding out how to develop the next generation robots, you really don't have that much of an interest in the chicken market in Europe and overall food strategy for the European Union. You just don't. And also, even if you did, it would be really difficult for you to come up with the figures. That's also why I love working with consultants, because I expect them to, draw the parallels and find the arguments. Another thing about shortening the pages is, some people usually say that the better you know your stuff, the easier it is for you to say it short. So again, to be convincing, you don't necessarily need a lot of pages, because if you really know what you're talking about, you can do it in 2 paragraphs. So I would really like to challenge that, but that's obviously also exactly the question. I mean, there's nobody we cannot talk our way out of an impact section by just using more words and longer sentences. We have to be short and precise. And in order to be short and precise, we have to find someone who knows what they're talking about. Yeah. And yes, make it visual and make it short, and use graphics. That's definitely a good expectations. And when you make projections of the future, try to maybe have different scenarios. For example, that could also be a good one. Saying that, well, this is an optimistic scenario, this is a realistic scenario, and this is a pessimistic scenario. That's also always very convincing. And try start somewhere, like, okay, what does the market look like today? How many employers do we have within this market? What does it mean? Are we going to create jobs? Are we going to destroy jobs? But very often this requires somebody who has a different sort of expertise and who can connect all sorts of dots, which normally a research group or a company does not connect, because their main focus and their love is on something else than policy papers.
Yeah, I think one element that's based on experience. You have the challenge of some partners being more committed than others. So you do have partners, you always have, and sometimes they're actually important, where the commitment is just not there. They might have been. You might have talked them a little bit into it. You had a long struggle to get them on board, and then when they have to do something, when they have to squeeze things out, then time to response, so to say, it's and that when you sit and do 3 proposals at the same time for the same deadline, like I've been doing, then that is a challenge. Yeah. But it's correct what you said, Melanie. Yeah, Barbara.
Nils, thank you. Okay, I like going back to what we were discussing before about the use of table graphics, figures within the impact section. What I have seen in a successful proposal is actually the use of tables. And I have an example for the section, the paragraph related to scale and significance of the project's contribution to the expected outcomes and impact. And that is a paragraph that brings us back to what described within the excellence section. And here it could be relevant to go through the objectives, and just to save space, you can just refer to the number of the objectives now we go very in detail on how to build a table, but it could be like just mention the objective, and then for each objective, what's the outcome, what's the scale, and what's the significance. And here again, outcome and impact, they are not results, they are above the result, they go beyond the results. So that is something more linked to the objective than the results itself. So what we want to achieve both after the end of the project and longer after the end of the project. And that it is something that can be done in the same table, because the table could cover both outcome and impact, and then the link to the objective, the outcomes, and then look at the impact. And then maybe there is not necessarily an impact for each objective or for each outcome, and then it is really up to everybody to look at how to build up the table. But then that is something that you can keep it simple and then link back to what is described within the excellence. And then also something else that I've seen in successful proposal is the use of the tables for the requirement and potential barriers to achieve the expected outcome and impact. And there again, it is also, we were discussing about that before, look at potential barriers. And here I would say just mention the barriers that are really barriers. So just don't mention something that can happen maybe, and it's never going to happen. Right. So don't use your space for something like that. But then look at potential barriers and how you will address the specific barriers. So a mitigation measure for each barrier. And then you can look at this barrier, the relevant work package, where they are described. If it then you can also describe the barrier and give it a title. Is an economic barrier. It is a barrier related to policy requirements throughout Europe. Is related to data. Is related to market acceptance. Then try to shape again a figure. Which kind of barrier are you looking for? Again, policy, scientific, market acceptance. Then look at these barriers. They should be like real barriers that where there is like a high chances that, or medium high chances that can happen, something obstacles, and then how you are going to address them and the mitigation measure. And that is also again something that can help you saving space. And then I will keep maybe longer part for the narrative within the part related to the how is now the title, I need to find that again, the one related to the critical pathways and the project's critical pathways towards outcome and impact. Then that section, then you could save space to write a little bit more narrative and some convincing argument in your proposal. It's just an idea of something I've seen. Again, it doesn't work for everybody, and the table is not necessarily the way to solve a space issue, but sometimes it also can help us making a table to understand what we are going to address, and then decide if it is better with the table or a narrative to describe the different aspects. Yes.
Yeah, and what I've seen also from colleagues, unique selling points, trying to carve out, say this you will not doesn't exist. No, but this has never been thought of. But this is what this is going to do. And then for God's sake, the market. You have to a credible market description if it's something that is if it's a commercial technology and so on. You need to have the space to. It doesn't have to be long, but you need to have the space to credibly say, this is what the market looks like. This is the money in it, estimation. This is what we can do to the market. This is the impact it will be. So if you do what you just said, Bob, then there should be enough space. There was enough space in what I've seen from my end that I work with Daniel to get these things in that makes it a credible description of what this project will do of good to the world, as Melanie started with. Yes, Barbara.
Yes, but having said that, here I think that there is also like a way to, again, to make sure that the evaluators, now the program just started, and most of the evaluators were used to longer proposal. So something as national contact points that we have seen is evaluator complaining in the evaluation summary report that there were not enough details. And sometimes it's not possible to have the same level of details that we had in Horizon 2020 because in many cases the proposals are shorter than they were earlier. So again, try to address all the points and use the space that you have either with narrative or tables in order also to make sure that also with evaluators that comes from many years of experience in Horizon 2020 and haven't realized yet that proposals are shorter now, that they are not going to complain that there are not enough detail or enough information because maybe they are not, because the proposal template expect us to write shorter proposal than before.
Nah, 6 o'clock, Melanie. We actually managed. I think we managed.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think it's okay. No,
I actually think Barbara's last words were great.
I think.
Yeah, I absolutely don't have anything to add, and I think we've said it all. And I really have to run in a few minutes.
So I'm just gonna make a fly out.
It was
here.
perfect.
Not like running like Barbara running, just leaving.
So what we didn't cover, I might have to have a special impact special on the summary table itself, because it's tricky. It might be a short episode on 30 minutes, but I need to cover it somehow with someone because it's a novelty.
Is this recorded for the podcast or is it just a conversation among us?
This will be on the podcast.
Okay, fine.
Now I'm making an outro because we didn't cover the summary table. Don't worry. First of all, thank you so much for coming around. And this will definitely not be the last time we will be together. So Melanie is officially in the advisory board. You will also be. I'm just going to put you on my side, Barbara. You're officially a part of the Grant advisory board now.
Thank you. Should be happy.
It's the filthy few. Actually, normally when I have these recordings, always something pops up where people say, "Oh, we should have another episode about this or this or this." But actually, we didn't have something there. But we will, and we'll get back to each other trilaterally, so to say. Now, again, thank you so much for joining me here in this episode. It's been great to having you around. A very nice episode. And for you, dear listeners, thank you for listening, hopefully to the end. If you're listening to this, you are listening to the end.
You really saved like the best for the end.
For Christ's sake, go into my website. For Christ's sake, submit to my email list of my podcast. It is the best way for me to build the podcast, all podcast research. So please, if you want to support me, subscribe to the email list. I'm not spamming you. You're just getting an email once a week when the episode is released. As I mentioned in the beginning, I have a hub. It's nice. I will keep building it. And if you have any questions, you can always contact me. Thank you, Melanie and Barbara. And hopefully you enjoy listening to this. Bye.
Bye. Thank you. Bye.
The Grant. You have been listening to The Grant, the EU funding podcast.